So, you know how the way that anime and manga is viewed by those who are unfamiliar with either of them? How it's just a massive jumble of craziness, weirdness, wackiness, all mushed together into one to create these stories that you just could not find anywhere else. How they are so strange that it's an acquired taste. Well, they are not wrong when they say this, that craziness and wackiness and weirdness are some of the charms that make these stories great. They are each one of a kind, but there are some that just stand out even in the anime and manga industry, and there is one such story in recent times at least that has been getting a lot of attention, and rightfully so, where right from chapter 1 you are going to be taken on a trip in more ways than one. A story that is kind of the personification of everything that outsiders view the world of anime and manga to be, and yet at the same time it's very different from its competition, the other manga in Jump. And the name of that story is Dandadan. A quick summary of the story: we follow Okarun and Momo Ayase on their adventures experiencing all kinds of the supernatural. Okarun being a very socially awkward, introverted person, and Momo being much more outgoing and confident. And starting there, the dynamic that these two share I think is really well handled as the main duo. You have this very unlikely friendship with the supernatural being not what brought them together, but what was the catalyst of their relationship. Okarun, being a character with low self-esteem, I think presents its own challenges in writing. The obvious way such a character develops is with them opening themselves up, coming out of their shell, being more confident and outgoing like a Momo Ayase. And we do see a bit of that when he becomes friends with her. He does seem more comfortable, but the key thing is that he's still an introvert. As with every other story, we progress through it, meet new people, gain new friends, make new friendships, but that doesn't mean he has to become a completely different character. His charms are his shyness and, not to be harsh, but the fact that he is a loser. But you could say part of his growth is represented with his transformation, because that is bold, that's outgoing. And then on the other side, Momo's outspoken self can easily fall into the circumstance where she could feel overbearing when positioned next to a character like Okarun. But she doesn't. One of her key character traits is also her kindness. It's a common trope, two characters, one quiet and the other loud, where oftentimes the loud one is doing the most. I think with these two we strike a great balance, so they both fit well alongside each other as the two main characters. And this notion extends to the rest of the cast as well, who are each great characters in their own right, and you can give them the spotlight because each of their roles don't clash with one another. And now, moving on, I want to say I'm not a big fan of romance in stories, but that's not to say I hate it, because I can see avenues where it can either help in the progression of certain characters or maybe be just a little subplot that could lead to something down the line. I bring this up because we have such a subplot between Okarun and Momo where it is blindingly obvious to everyone else that they like each other, but neither of them have the confidence to say it, which can just get very frustrating at times, because it's like the same routine of almost so close yet so far. If one of them just says what they want to say, But away from romance and now onto the comedy. This series is funny. Really, really funny. For instance, our main character Okarun loses his penis, then he loses his balls. They're the next ones to go, and this is part of the plot. This man loses his family jewels and we're trying to get them back. This is storytelling at its finest. Yes, comedy is subjective, but there is no way that you can tell me this is not funny. The main selling point of this series is its unbounded creativity, chaos, which I will get to. So when your plot revolves around retrieving the genitals of the main character, the story is going to be batshit crazy. And away from comedy and then to horror. Yes, horror, because so often you will turn the page and receive a nice jump scare for your troubles. This is partly thanks to the amazing art, which is also something I will get to. But also, this story somehow blends together every genre and yet still remains cohesive and consistent. cohesive and consistent in the fact that it is unapologetically balls to the walls in pretty much every aspect. You don't know what you are going to see when you turn the page, but whatever it is, you're just not going to question it, because by that point you will have learned there's no predicting with Dandadan. When you have the main characters running because they have no idea what the hell is going on, I interpret that as meaning I should have no idea what the hell is going on. And yet in all of these bizarre, absurd and ridiculous situations that the characters find themselves in, it is still able to hit you with those gut-wrenching punches, those tear-jerking moments. You grow fond of and attached to these characters, and then that's matched with some really tough topics that are implemented really well, I want to add. I mean, chapter 16 itself was a whole world of tragedy. All the while the pace of the story doesn't really let up during these kind of moments anyway. You would usually associate the sadder moments in a story with a slowed down pace to really help you take in the dread or the tragedy of the current circumstances or what's just happened. But in Dandadan, we achieve the same thing, some great emotional results while maintaining that 1,000,000 miles per hour attitude. It's a sign of a great story where you feel the adrenaline of the action in 1 second, the joy of the comedy in the next second, and then the sadness of the tragedy in the next. And I think Dandadan does that. But back to the chaos, because it can just get so outrageously over the top that it just makes you wonder what the heck was going on in this mangaka's life for them to come up with some of these random ass concepts. Like, I can't really put into words just what the heck is happening in this story, or what the heck I'm looking at, even though that is the whole point of this video, but you get what I mean. So I'm just going to be throwing up random manga pages and panels just to put into perspective, how are these things from the same story? I do really want to try and hammer home in this video just how ridiculous this story is, but in all honesty, anything I say doesn't really do it justice. So the art is amazing. I think Dandadan's art is some of my favorite because many times the pages are filled with whatever set piece the characters are currently finding themselves in, but it's still incredibly coherent. You won't need to take a second or third look to fully understand what is on the page. And most impressive of all is just how consistent the artwork is. From chapter 1 to this latest chapter, I don't think the art has missed a single step. From its portrayal of different moods, like I said before, or genres like the creepiness, the comedy factor, the action. If the story wants you to feel some type of way, then you're going to feel that type of way. I talked in my Sakamoto Days video about paneling and different angles, how the manga uses it, that, and how I'm not really an expert on that kind of thing. I know there's definitely more to it than this, but I guess it comes down to, getting the proportions correct of whatever you're drawing, and I would say that Dandadan also smashes this out of the park as well. Like I said before, the art is incredibly consistent and so clean. Now, I've talked about how the story is extremely chaotic and how it's always moving at this insanely great pace, but one thing that stands out is that I don't think we actually have an end goal yet. Yes, we have to retrieve Okarun's bollocks, but then what? We are 140 chapters into this manga and there's no real end point in sight. And I want to add to that, who's the main antagonist of the story? Is there even a main antagonist for the story? Now, I'm not saying this to speculate on what those things may be or where the story may be headed in the future, because as I said, trying to predict anything in this manga is pointless. You're not going to guess the trajectory of this story, but rather, when I actually think about it, this story has managed to keep me hooked for almost 150 chapters worth of story without a main goal or a main antagonist, and that's an amazing feat for a story to pull off. I mean, I guess you could say that when One Piece was 150 chapters in, we didn't know who our main antagonist was yet, but with One Piece it's a very slow burn with tremendous build-up that's still being built up to this day, and I don't think Dandadan is going to follow that mold and surpass 1000 chapters. I don't know how long it's going to run for, but with the anime just around the corner, which looks amazing from the trailer, and with the likes of Jujutsu Kaisen and My Hero Academia probably coming to an end relatively soon, their manga run that is, I think that Dandadan's rise is only just beginning. Its popularity is high at this point, but I think it is very likely that it is going to skyrocket, and deservedly so.